Hello, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins, and thank you for joining Dr. Boyce Watkins on AOL Black Voices. I'm glad you love to come by blackvoices.com and yourblackworld.com. And today I wanted to talk about something that is a consistent concern for me, and that is the state of black male incarceration and mass incarceration in the United States. In case you don't know, the United States actually incarcerates 5.5 times more black men in America right now than South Africa did during the height of apartheid. And if if apartheid was considered to be the most racist regime in history, or one of the most racist, then what does that make us? And the person I wanted to talk about this issue with is someone that I deeply respect on the matter. He's an expert on the topic. His name is Dr. Byron Price. And Dr. Price, you are a professor at Texas Southern University, is that correct?
That's correct, Dr. Watkins.
And what department are you in exactly? I want to make sure I get that right.
I'm in the political science department.
Political science, okay. Because we had Dr. Khalil Muhammad, who does African American history, and I want to make sure I didn't make a mistake there. So I want to ask you, one place I want to start is with the backdrop on what's going on in Georgia. I forwarded you a link about some inmates in Georgia who were protesting the fact that they felt that their human rights were being violated by the prison system. They felt that they were not getting adequate access to health care, adequate access to education. They weren't being allowed reasonable access to their families. And in response to the protests, in fact, they were having the hot water turned off, which in the wintertime, you need hot water. They had the heat turned off in 30-degree weather. Some of them were beaten beyond recognition. And the prison system has not felt compelled to answer for any of this behavior, which is absolutely egregious and unbelievable. When you read about this and what was going on down in Georgia, what were some of your thoughts on this matter?
Well, it's interesting that you bring up this issue as well. If you look at today's it's an article in the Griot talks about California also with their prison crowding. Well, I think part of the problem, Dr. Watkins, is who advocates for prisoners for the most part. People really don't care very much about prisons. Then you have poor people that are also incarcerated, so they don't have an interest group. They don't have people that lobby for them. So. And this has happened throughout prisons. Guards basically, I think maybe a year ago, you and I, this judge supposedly was sodomizing the inmates, allegedly sodomizing the inmates. So I think prisoners are exploited quite a bit. And because people don't really care about them, they have no one to advocate for them, and their families are poor. As a result, they continue to be abused. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you go ahead. I'm listening. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, and I was basically done, though.
Well, I would say that when you talk about this mass incarceration issue, some disturbing things seem to be allowed to persist and perpetuate when it comes to the prison system. For example, a lot of people make jokes about going to prison and getting raped. They say, oh, well, don't go to prison and drop the soap. Yeah. Or you go to prison, he'll be somebody's boyfriend or girlfriend. And that's not funny. Because not only is rape traumatic for anybody who goes through it, but it also affects the spread of disease within the black community, where you have prisoners that might catch HIV from being raped or whatever the case may be, and they, when a man comes home from jail, they say the first couple things he goes to look for are some good food and a good woman, and then at the same time you're compounding that with marginalization of these men, which gives them less of an incentive to engage in any kind of responsible behavior. So ultimately, what goes on in these prisons affects all of us. When these fathers are being shipped away and their children are being raised without their father in the home, or the mothers are being shipped away, and in some cases both parents go off to jail or prison, and you have several children as a result of these relationships that are not being raised with parents, and they continue the cycle. How do we begin to even attack this issue? I mean, to at least make it part of the public dialogue so that we can fix the problems that exist within the prison system.
I think that's an excellent question, and I think you laid it out very well. And you're right, the increasing HIV rate amongst African American females basically is because as a result of the increased because of incarceration. A lot of black males are coming back home, and it's making it difficult for females to sort of negotiate who they can marry and so forth. And I think, as you said, I remember my grandmother was an extremely important part of my life, but for the most part, now grandparents are 30-some years old. So when, as you pointed out, when you remove the father and the mother from the home, a lot of the kids wind up in the social bureaucracies and the welfare system and foster care. And when you think about us as people, do we actually adopt a lot? You know, a lot of African Americans, maybe they can't afford to adopt. And I know one thing, you know, Madonna and Angelina Jolie get a lot of criticism for adopting black children, but a lot of African Americans aren't adopting children. But I think the biggest problem, boys, we have a responsibility. I don't think we as the community have done our job as far as creating employment opportunities. When you think about the dropout rates, you know, we're not engaging schools. Like I teach at Texas Southern University. We have a school called Jack Yates, has 60-some% dropout rate. Then you have University of Houston, and we kind of bracket our feeder schools, but we're not our schools of education aren't engaging these schools. So I think we have some responsibility to address a lot of the social ills in our communities. Fathers have to be better fathers and so forth, even if they're not married to the mother and so forth. And philanthropy starts at home. You know, I help my nieces and nephews. So those of us that are able, we need to help our nieces and nephews if we have brothers and sisters or uncles incarcerated. So I think we have to pull more weight.
Well, you know, when I think about this and you talk about pulling weight and the issues that we should fight for, I think that part of pulling your weight sometimes can also be a matter of having the courage to push others to pull their weight, not just individuals, but also society as a whole, institutions that impact this issue. I was talking today with we brought the Reverend Jesse Jackson this afternoon, and one of the things that we agreed on is that the United States Justice Department needs to continuously be tagged and poked to deal with this issue of mass incarceration. We know that black people, brown people, and poor people are being affected by this system. It's not just something that happens to them over there. It affects our families and our communities. When there are not men in the community to be married, that affects how the children are being raised. That affects the options that women have. That affects the choices that other men have to make, because every black man even black men who are successful encounter marginalized black men who may threaten your life or persuade you to engage in illegal activity or give you some kind of drama that you really don't need in your life. And all of this is created, perpetuated, and facilitated by a lack of opportunity. When there are no jobs, then people have nothing to do but hang out in the street. When there is no education, they have nothing to do except go to the morgue or go to the prison after graduation. So ultimately, we have to come together to not just deal with the prison system and not just save the black male. We're ultimately talking about saving the black family in all of this.
Yes, I agree with you. And I think you laid it out again. You laid it out very well. And when you look at how we spend money, I read a study where we make $500-some billion, but $1 stays in our community only 2 hours before it recycles out. Now, you're a finance professor. Now, we can't continue to spend money like that and create businesses. And the U.S. economy has shed like 7 million jobs. And so we have to go back to manufacturing. I agree with you. It is a family issue, but I think we have to begin to sort of like create different paradigms of success. Success shouldn't be a Bentley, a lot of the things that a lot of the hip-hop artists sing about. Success should be about being good fathers. Engage in our school system, volunteering, okay, as you said, holding those systems accountable, okay, like, for example, California refuses to reform its prison system, and then they're claiming states' right because the federal government is saying you have to reduce crowding and so forth. So I agree with you, and even President Obama, we have to engage him and force him to talk about, as you've tried to do, talk about black unemployment. I mean, he hasn't engaged that issue, so those people that supposed to represent us, the preachers, the politicians, and the black college presidents, I think they failed in their responsibility. And so we have to, because they question, the Wall Street Journal article said that HBCUs are irrelevant. Only 2 HBCU presidents responded to this particular article. So those people that supposedly leaders in our communities, as you said, we need to hold them to task, and we need to hold ourselves to task as well.
Well, I certainly believe that all of us are leaders in our community on some level. I mean, even if you can't lead the whole country, you can lead your own family. You can lead your own community. You know, you can, you talk about adopting children. You don't have to adopt a child officially in order to adopt a child, at least partially. That means, you know, if you see that kid that needs that guidance, that needs that love and support, you can offer a little bit of that. You know, I mean, it really goes back to the village. You don't have to bring the child into your house and feed the child every day, but you can say some kind words to the child, give the child some encouragement, give the child a couple of dollars, help the child, you know, find a way to go to school or whatever it is that you have time to do. So all of us have to feel some responsibility for kind of making this right. And I think going back to this issue that, you know, in the area that you've you know, built a lot of expertise around in terms of mass incarceration, I think that needs to really be fundamentally addressed. Now, in terms of this situation in Georgia, where the men have protested and demanded their human rights, what do you think we can sort of learn from that in terms of what we should expect when it comes to prisoners' rights, and how we can still punish, even if that's something we want to do. I think some inmates need to be punished for what they did, right? But we can also perhaps rehabilitate. Right. I mean, because if we only punish and we don't rehabilitate, then ultimately we're punishing ourselves.
Yeah.
Because we're releasing people from the system who are worse when they come out than they were when they came in, which makes society more dangerous for all of us. Right. So ultimately, what are some of the things that prisons can do to improve the conditions for the inmates? If you ran the entire correction systems for the entire state of Georgia or Texas, which is even worse than Georgia, you know, what are some of the changes you would implement immediately?
I think, as you said as well, a lot of prison systems have cut out opportunities to get educated. Okay, a lot of them don't have libraries. A lot of them have cut out an opportunity for them to get GEDs, to get a college degree. But also, I think there has to be culture. A lot of these prisons are in rural communities. When you think about most of the CEOs or correctional officers are white, but most of the prisons are black, Hispanic, and so forth. So we always talk about culturally competent public administration and evaluation, where people, a lot of times, there are cultural issues that take place in prisons as well. Say the white guards really don't interact with the black prisoners in the Hispanic prisons. So I think, just like we talk about in the community for us policing, then a lot of times, you know, there's so many black men in prison, then they should sort of make sure that the prison system is diverse with people on staff. I mean, those people there. So I think that's part of the problem as well. But even when you think about how they exploit inmate labor, where prisons actually don't have rights, a lot of them get paid 50 cents an hour from $2 an hour. But these corporations that sort of like contract out their prison labor make millions of dollars. Corrections Corporation of America, the largest for-profit prison corporation, made $1.7 billion last year. Okay. But these inmates when they get out of prison, they give them $40 a day. But if you've been doing 10 years of hard labor, I mean, you don't have any money to save up when you leave prison, although you've been working, and they won't hire them when they get out. So I think if you can hire an inmate while he's in prison, while they're incarcerated, then these same companies ought to be kind of forced to hire some of these people. I know that's kind of controversial, but they're saying they're good enough to work for them while they're incarcerated. But I think also when you take into consideration, we don't think about rehabilitation or restorative justice anymore. Most of it is punitive. And so I think the system has moved to being punitive. I just find it interesting that our country is so religious, but yet they're so unforgiving. You take even Michael Vick, how the man served his time. People are just aren't very sympathetic to prisoners.
Well, you know, and I think that what's important is that we have to draw that line between you know, the fact that there's a difference between advocating for fundamental human rights versus simply saying that it's okay for someone to be a prisoner or for someone to commit crime. I think you can be tough on crime while at the same time not cutting off your nose to spite your face. You know, if you get to some extent, if your heart is filled with hate and the desire for revenge, then ultimately that hate turns itself in on you. It destroys you ultimately. And our anger toward those who have gone outside of the law. Now notice that's a lot of people. It could be you or me or people watching, right? Because we incarcerate more people in the United States than any country on earth. So we love to put people in jail. So don't act like it can't be you. But when we get that desire to punish people that's so great, ultimately, we end up destroying our society in the process because we're sending them to this hellhole that makes them into worse citizens than they were when they went in. No, I want you to be tough on crime, but God forbid if somebody commits a crime against somebody in my family, even if it's murder or rape or something heinous like that, I want that person to go to a place where they are forced to become educated, where they are forced to be in a situation where they have opportunities to embrace values that will make them constructive, productive citizens. Not put them in a situation where they're going to become a worse rapist and a worse murderer and do that to somebody else's family. So ultimately, we've got to grow beyond that when it comes to how we frame our mindset on incarceration.
Yes, I agree with you. I think one of the things they ought to do, they ought to mandate education before people can be released. They ought to be able to have some kind of education before they even release. Because when you think about the employment market, if you don't have a high school diploma or even a bachelor's degree, really is not good enough in many respects. Because a lot of people are underemployed, still at home with their parents. So before people are released from prison. But I think to even back up some, a lot of these nonviolent, low-level offenders really shouldn't be incarcerated. Because, as you said, they come out worse. I'm all for punishing the violent offenders. Okay, but the low-level, nonviolent offenders should be in diversion programs. Okay, they should be able to go to college and do some other things more constructive because they can be rehabilitated. As you said, some people can be rehabilitated. But I think the problem is, Dr. Watkins, is that profit has entered into the equation. Private prisons own prisons, and their stock trades on the stock exchange. So there's a vested interest in incarceration. Even once they freed us from slavery, the prison system didn't actually start until they freed black males, and they couldn't recapture that free prison labor. So our system of capitalism actually exploits labor. So they have to incarcerate to get away with extracting free labor. So I think it's a sinister plot as well behind this over-incarceration of minorities.
Well, I don't disagree with you. I mean, the 13th Amendment that abolishes slavery says that slavery is abolished except for when you've been convicted of a crime. So that effectively gives them a loophole to say, if you go to prison, you will be a slave. And so it's no coincidence when you look back at the 13th Amendment that black males make a disproportionate percentage of those who are incarcerated. And if people are naive enough to think that, oh, it's just about the fact that they made bad choices, well, guess what? It can happen to you and happen in your family. I mean, you have lots of people who were relatively law-abiding citizens who made a bad choice one way or the other and ended up getting a lot of years in prison. So we cannot act like this issue only affects other people, because it affects all of us. So it's therefore up to all of us to do our part in trying to fix the issue. So I want to say thank you very much for coming by, Dr. Byron Price at Texas Southern University. You are the pride of Texas Southern University. You can tell the president I said that. Send him the video, because I don't know of any other faculty at that university except for you, brother, because you are doing your thing, and God bless you for the powerful work that you do.
Thanks, Dr. Watkins.
All right. And thank you guys for checking us out. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins with AOL Black Voices. Make sure you keep coming back to blackvoices.com and keep going to yourblackworld.com. And remember that the greatest black leader in the history of the world is the one that lies inside of you. So go out and lead somebody today. You ain't got to change the world, but you can change yourself and change the world around you. I'm gone until we see each other again. God bless you. Peace.